used to live in an estate that had like a block of shops and a block of flats above it, right? But there was like these rooms that we thought were just bin cupboards, right? One day as a kid, I think I came out of the chemist or something like that. I was really young, right? And I saw the door open to one of these what we all thought were bin cupboards, right? And there was two men in there sat on computers and fucking screens, right? And the whole estate, I just always thought that was a bin cupboard, right? And you never see these guys go in or out, right? But that day I saw them in there, right? So I know it's a reality. Travis Mate Podcast or Travis Mate Podcast. Yeah, of course we're still whispering, bro. If you don't know by now, well, actually, maybe this is your first time doing this, so I'll give you a blind and I'll bring you up to speed, right? The reason I whisper Driver's Mate, right, is not only because there's weirdos and creeps that whisper and talk about us over here at this show, right? You know, we're already getting into our OP and Anthony beefing with Howard Stern kind of thing, right? And that's neither here nor there, right? But the reason why I go Driver's Mate Podcast, it started out like, so just imagine the Driver's Mate Podcast show, right? You're watching the Truman Show, a real life show like the Truman Show, right? But in the Truman Show, Truman figures out that the show is being filmed, and what Truman would decide to do in this alternate reality, of course, is make his own show while in the Truman Show, right? So inadvertently, the audience of the Truman Show would be Truman's audience for Truman's Show, right? I know I'm not really explaining this great, right? People in the older episodes are gonna be like, bro, you missed that one, right? But hey, the Truman Show, Truman Show, right, is what Driver's Mate Podcast is, right? I'm already off on a tangent already, and I like, bloody hell, what's wrong with this guy? But yeah, man, just imagine how crazy that is. Even the idea of the Truman Show existing and what that actually represents now in 2023, right? The idea that Jim Carrey or Truman is being filmed from his TV, his radio, his spy cameras in the bathroom, in the mirror, and there's just like thousands of people out there in the real world off this little island or this little studio that are just living with Truman, right? They're watching Truman when they go to sleep, they're watching Truman in the bath. If you watch the show, right, if you watch the film, you see like all of these things, right? And it's crazy, right? That I don't know when that was filmed. Maybe that was the late 80s or 90s, not sure, right? But just imagine how real that is now, right? And let's just push aside your George Orwell 1984 like conspiracy skeptic kind of viewpoint of it, and let's just look at it in reality, right? So I'm a 90s baby, so I'm quite early in the 90s, but I'm not yeah, anyway, I'm not old, right? Let's just say that, right? But I remember as a kid, right, when Big Brother happened, right, the phenomena that was Big Brother in the UK, right? There was probably shows like this that existed elsewhere in Europe and America, right? But I remember it actually sweeping the nation, right? My older sister would watch it, right? And it would just baffle me, like, because the first time I ever watched it with her, like, and a little bit of it, they were literally just watching like some random people in a room, right, just laying down sleeping, right, and talking, right, and it's like, what the fuck are we watching this for, right? And as a kid, I'm like, nah, I want to watch Cartoon Network, right? Put on channel 34. I was like, why are we watching these, right? Do you get what I mean? And I was like that because I couldn't understand why people would want to watch people just, and not even people acting, not even people like, I don't know, like a movie or a show or news or anything, like, no, just well, they are kind of acting now that you get older and you realise actually a lot of that stuff was kind of manufactured and they kind of scripted it, right? Even though there was elements of reality in it, yeah, it was, a lot of it was scripted. You realise that as you get older, right? But at the time you're like, what the hell, this doesn't make sense, right? And my era was the era of like your Bryans and your Jordans and shit like that, right? And it even crept into junior school life, right? That's how mad Big Brother was. Like, the newspapers were crazy with it, the TV was crazy with it, radios were crazy with it. This is the early 2000s, right? So if you just look how crazy that is then, right? And now that we have mobile phones and social medias and influencers, stalking and people watching is at an all-time high, right? So in my own personal meager existence, right, which is the Driver's Mate podcast and the Truman Show of my actual real personal life, right, which if you're up on game on who I am and what I do in the real world, right, you will probably understand why I call it the Truman Show, right? Because people are creeps and they like to watch people like me and just be like, hey, let's keep an eye on this guy, right? He's gonna do something interesting, I know it, right? And it goes past the point of just looking at someone like me because you're interested into the point of obsession, right? And then indirectly that obsession can either turn you into a crazy serial killer shrine maker, right? Or it can turn you into like, you inadvertently worship these people, right? And I'm not putting myself in that position at all, that category, right? But because I'm a creative, because I'm like an influencer and a musician and all of that in my own real personal life away from work, right? People kind of treat me like that. And at the same time, well, I don't know, man. Maybe I'm a conspiracy theorist, right? Maybe I'm crazy, right? But I've had my like run-ins with your cults and your like, I don't know, man, like social engineering groups, right? Or secret societies, you can say. I've had my brushes with these people, right? So I know what they do, and I know that they watch people, they spy on people, and I know about gang stalking and all of that, right? Target individuals, right? I've existed in that realm and I probably still do. That's why I call it the Truman Show of the Truman Show, right? Okay, yeah, so with all that in mind, right? The power of how social media is now, right? Just the fact that you can see me where I am. Some creep somewhere is logging everything. It's like, yes, I know exactly who he is, where he's working, when he's not at home, when he's uploaded Drivers Mate podcast. I know everything he says when he's in his house. I listen, right? And they become fanatical creeps, right? And it goes into the point of worship, right? Even if you think you hate this person and you hate watch, the fact that you're so attached to their existence, right? And they don't even know you exist, right? Because to them you're nobody, right? You've not loaded up in their simulation. You're not yet rendered, right? If you understand what I mean, if you ever play Grand Theft Auto, if you're blowing down the street, right, at some point the street ain't even gonna render yet, right? And the NPCs ain't even rendered, right? So the stalkers and the weirdos and the people watchers in the individual's world, right? In like a single lady's world, right? Them people haven't rendered yet. They don't exist yet until they climb up in the window, right, and she starts screaming, right? That's the same kind of thing. But of course I'm a man, so if you try that, God be with you, right? So with that in mind, right, that all exists, yeah. And the idea of how Big Brother changed how people watch people and reality shows and all that, because reality shows weren't a thing until like kind of recent times, right, in my existence anyway, right? As a child, why the hell would I want to watch a reality show, right? Unless it was something like Ninja Warrior or something, like, you know, like they had game shows as a kid that you'd watch, right? Or like BBC and shit like that, right? And I'm so English and I'm so state indoctrinated, right, with BBC and all that. I know, right? All our childhood was like that, right? So hey, like, I know from the outside world we look so liberal and democratic, right? But really we're like under like an iron fist regime, right? Psychologically we are in England, right? That's a whole nother matter, right? That gets into your V for Vendetta stuff, right? And Stephen Fry, I got you, bruv. Don't worry, innit? In the real world, I'm quite intelligent, right? But I played a fool. I've got you, Stephen Fry. I will pick up the work and carry it, yes. Yeah, but anyway, people are really weird, right? So we say that the Drivers Mate podcast is the Truman Show's Truman Show, right? So with that aside, right, and the whole idea of privacy invasion, right? This morning I was thinking about some of my work life, right? Some of my old jobs and stuff, like just cool stuff I've done, right? And I really want to tell a lot of my work stories, right? They're fucking hilarious. Some are funny, some are creepy, some are just interesting. But then I thought about that same privacy thing, right? Although you see me talking on a podcast while I'm at work, right, I'm still a professional at work, right? I don't violate the privacy of my customers, and I don't violate the privacy of my employers and co-workers, right? It's just something I don't do, right? Other people, they don't care, they do whatever they want to do, right? And that's them. But me personally, I don't like the idea of violating other people's privacy, right? So a lot of my work stories and stuff, I would have to really think about how I would tell it without not incriminating, but like implicating the company and the co-workers and the customers, right? But just for instance, right, I used to do a lot of work in London and I fucking loved it, right? I love working in London. London's such a pretty place, right? And I'll get into that in a minute, right? But just one example of some of the crazy work stories, right? At one point, right, I think we was installing some integrated thing, right, at someone's house. Yeah? We'll just leave it vague like that, right? Whatever integrated thing you think it was that, right? So I think this was like Wembley, right? See, I'm already baiting up people's ends and all of that, right? But anyway, I think this was like in Wembley, right, area. But we went to do this yard now, me and one guy, right? Me and my driver's mate, right? I went in the yard, right, and it's like a downstairs, it's like a flat. You know, like in London, it's proper crammed and people do house shares, flat shares. Like, there's a lot of steps, there's a lot of halfway house kind of business in London, right? Because space is limited and the cost is high, right? But anyway, we go into this place, right? It's like a little garden at the back, right? And then you go into the downstairs, and it's like a one bed house, right? That's been split into two places. Anyway, the minute we bust through the back gate, bruv, it's just cram up in there, right? It stinks of fucking weed. It absolutely reeks of it, right? There's a poor fucking rabbit in a cage, just shivering, all traumatized and shit, right? And I shouldn't laugh, right? And animal rights would be like, that's not funny, right? But it was fucked in there, right? This is just the garden, right? It's rabbit shit everywhere. It stinks of weed, right? Now we bust the door to go in and do our job, right? And I don't know if these people were like Korean, Thai, Vietnamese, I don't know, right? But they kind of looked like that, right? And there was just bear of them in the house, right? A tiny little house, a fucking bear of them, right? And there was like two men, right? And bare women, and one woman we thought was a woman, but wasn't a fucking woman, right? And that's what I'm saying, like, it's mad when I actually think about how mad that situation was, right? Me one time I was looking at each other like this, because you know on the job you got to be quite professional, right? So you can't cuss out the customer, and you can't just be like, what the fuck is going on here? Like, so we're just giving each other the side eye, right? Like, what's going on in here, kind of thing, right? But there's these, like, after analysing it a bit later, and after we discussed what we saw after we finished our job, was like, yeah, the two men that was there with all of those women and that, right, they were pimps, right? Not like your American Mac Daddy pimps, like, I'm talking about two short Asian men, right? Dressed with Gucci and all that kind of shit, right? But the house was a fucking pigsty, right? And it looked like they had a party the night before or something like that, right? There's cake there, there was alcohol bottles, there's one Asian guy passed out on the chair, right, on the settee, right? It was just mad, it was just a fucking pigsty, right? And of course, when you go to jobs like that, right, like I said, working in that kind of job, I've gone to the richest of the richest people, right, and the poorest of the poorest, right? But these people, they looked like they were running a brothel kind of operation from their residence, right? Just by the attitudes of the women, how they interacted with us and each other, right? And like the clear remnants of drugs and the smell of sex and all of that in the fucking house, right? It was there. It was all there. And it was like one bed and a little front room and a kitchen, and like a strip of kitchen and all that, right? But yeah, it was like fucking hell, right? You know when you're doing a job like that, where you have to go to people's premises, right? You're like, hey, you knew he was coming, right? We called ahead and we booked. So what the fuck, right? You know what I mean? That's what I mean. I'm already like kind of disrespecting the customers with their privacy, right? But obviously I'm not gonna say who, when, and where. But anyway, right? We're doing our job, right? And we've got to go through all this fucking dirt and grime and the smell of weed and the fucking animals and all kinds of shit in this little condensed place, right? Bare people, seeing people waking up off the floor, right? It was just fucked in there, right? But there was one, like, I'm gonna call her an Asian woman, right? But she was clearly a tranny, right? And all due respect to the LGBTQ people, right? But this woman, man, gender neutral thing, right, was clearly a fucking man, right? And it was just like, you know when you see those old kung fu films, right, and they act like dainty concubines, right, proper over acting the woman's part, right? That was what this thing was doing, right? And it was fucking hilarious. And she was onto one of my workmates, right? And it was fucking funny, man. I can't even begin to describe how mad that was, right? Just like fucking hell, right? Now, personally, I've never been to a brothel in real life, right? And it's not to say I don't have the need to, right? Because I might want to go one day, right? Just as a geezer, just being out there and honest, right? But I haven't been before. So what I would imagine, it would be like that, but not as bad as that. Do you get me, right? That looks like their actual place where they're all living together, right? Hustling, doing whatever they're doing, right? Because you can tell, right? These are living in, like, these men have got on designer shit, right, but they're living like tramps. Do you get what I'm saying? They're actually living like tramps. Their environment, the way they move, the way they speak, the smell of the yard, the outside, everything. They're just living like tramps, right? But they got all of these, they're wearing designers while crashed out on fucking couches and shit. It's just like, it's just mind blowing anyway, right? But anyway, I've already violated enough. I violated more than one thing, right? I think, right? And there's really so much more I could go in just about that story. I was absolutely mind blown, right? But yes, I used to work in London a lot, right? And I fucking loved it, right? And obviously, for a Londoner, they're gonna be like, fuck London, bruv. What do you know, right? But the kind of job I did, like I just said, I got to see the richest of the rich, the most secret, private parts of London City, right? Westminster, North London, Wembley, further out, right? Further into your, I was about to say Bushy and all of them places, right? To the more richer counties before you spill into your St. Albans and further up, right? So I got to see counties, right? You know what I'm saying, innit? London Colney and all of that, right? I got to see all of the richest places to all of the poorest places in Enfield and Tottenham, everywhere, right? Haringey. I worked in all of those areas, right? And from, like I said, from the richest to the poorest, right? And I fucking loved it, right? The work was hard, right? The driving wasn't fun, right? But interacting with so many different people, getting to experience the city because I'm a country boy, right? So for me, going to London, I don't go unless there's a reason to go. So if I was going to go to London, I was going to go Oxford Street, like everyone else in England, right? And that like Soho, Oxford Street, yeah, it is a beautiful, sick vibe. I work there too, but that's not the real London, right? And it's like if you said to a New Yorker, I'm going to Madison Square, right? They're gonna be like, well, that's not really New York, is it? Like, it's not all of these boroughs, is it? It's the same kind of thing, right? So just imagine going south, going north, it's like going Brooklyn, going Queens and Harlem and all of that, right? They're their own places, right? So if you're foreign and you're watching this, I'm giving you a perspective from a guy that's from a town, right? I'm from outside of London. So just imagine the old story of the country mouse, right? You remember Fievel, yeah? Bad Fievel, right? I'm like Fievel, right? So when I come there, I'm very much country, but I'm more righteous with it, right? And I can't say that I'm righteous in my own self-righteousness, but I'm more of a righteous, not Bible bashing kind of thing, you know, not Bible bashing, Bible belting kind of thing in America, kind of like that, right? We're more conservative in the country, we're more hard-working sort of earth. Although I think fast, I don't talk and move as fast as people in London do, right? So to people where I'm from, I'm a fast thinker, right, and a fast mover and a fast reactionary kind of plots. See, think faster than I can speak, right? Plot, plan, strategize, maneuver kind of person, right? I'm not a finesse kind of person. I'm not clever enough. I know, like, innit, that sounds exactly like what a finesse would say, right? I'm not, innit? I'm not. If you know me personally, you know I'm just a creative, and I think. And I like things to be quite in-depth and deep, right? More substance. But yeah, as a person, right, because I'm country, right, I've always loved architecture, right? Not just Gothic architecture, right? New buildings architecture, because in towns you don't get to see that, right? Every house, every estate looks near enough the fucking same, right? Our town centres, they look the same. You've got one like 1920 building and the rest are just prefab German stuff, right? With all due respect. But when you go to the city, you get to see it all, right? You get to see beautiful buildings, right? And obviously, like, some of my drivers mates were like, what's wrong with you, bruv? You've never seen the city before. I'm like, yeah, but no, at the same time, I haven't, right? I really enjoy the way, the art of the buildings, the way the streets are designed, right? So I've taken loads of photography, like, I really got into my photography bag when I went to London. There's so much good stuff I've got I haven't released and shown yet, right? But like I said, I went to the most richest places and the most poorest places, right? I interacted with the most rich and some famous people, right? So they allowed me to, like, look off the balcony in high exclusive areas, right? And that right next to the Thames and your banking parts and all of that, right? So I'm going up to the highest floors, seeing what it's like to live in these private buildings, right? This is why my hunger, my drive is a bit more like actually this is possible, that is possible, right? I've been to some of the places where the people that make Harry Potter live, right? So that's what I'm trying to explain to you. Like, it's not our menial mediocre existence as just like working class people is not everything, right? There's more on the up and up, and there's more on the lower and lower, right? The poorest estates and all of that, right? Where you got foreign people crammed in little living spaces with bad landlords and all of that shit. I've seen it too, right? So with all due respect to the company I worked for, my colleagues, and the privacy of the customers, right? I understand that, right? So I'm not going to go too much into that yet, at least until the time where I know I'm not going to be interacting with the working world that much, if that time ever comes, right? So I'm a fucking workaholic, right? But I loved London. I loved working in London, right? I loved it, right? Because of the people and because of the buildings, right? So I've got loads of photography from exclusive places that the average Londoner don't even get to see, right? Things they probably don't even know exist in the city of London and Westminster and expanding round, right? They probably don't even know these places exist, because as a normal person you'll never get to go there, right? So like that, right? Like I said, I've met some very interesting people that own these places and look after these premises and all of that, right? And the workers of the richest people, right? Because a lot of the richest people and successful people, sometimes you meet them in their yards and all of that, but most of the time you meet their secretaries and their assistants, right? Which is super dope, because they give you the scoop. When obviously they know, like you know, they're doing the job, you're doing the job. They're like, yeah, you know, this is da-da-da, right? And you're like, oh, really? Like, all of that, right? And I'm not a starstruck kind of person, but it's interesting, right? So yes, I loved working in London, and doing that specifically was quite enjoyable for me as a country kid. Like I said, I'm like Fievel, right, when it comes to, do you remember Fievel? Like, I think because Fievel is a mouse, if you don't know. It's like an old cartoon film, right? They had very different versions of Fievel, like Fievel in the West, Fievel in London, right? And it's like that, right? But there was one Fievel film, right? I think it was like a Sherlock Holmes type of one, right? It's thematic, right? But he's fighting one pagan rat, bruv, and he's fighting someone on the Big Ben, right? Yeah, so I'm Fievel, big up Fievel, right? Little mouse, right? Country boy, right? That's me, in all truth, right? And Americans don't really understand it. They think England is London and all that. Like, just some English people think America is New York, right? So they probably won't understand it when I'm saying this, that London, the way it's set up, is quite spectacular to me as a country person, right? I love that. So yeah. Also, right, like even in the job that I do now, right, I'm always looking at architecture, right, and I notice in towns where I've lived, right, and things like that, there's these old abandoned buildings, right, and they appear abandoned, but this is the killer. Like, you know, like in England we have a BT that run all of the telecoms lines, like from the old days, right? They set up the foundation of the internet and the phones and all that. I think it's BT anyway. They used to be BT, but now they're like a purple company. Broadband fibre, all of that, right? But they've got these buildings that look like, if you ever watched the old Batman cartoon, the Warner Brothers ones, right? And it's all gothic and these big buildings with the, I don't know how to explain it, right? But they look like those buildings from the Batman cartoons, right? And then all of those old telecom buildings still exist within all of the cities and all of the towns and all of the villages built up around them, right? So they still look like how they did when they built them, right? So I see those all the time, right? And abandoned type of factory buildings. But the thing is, right, here's the killer, right? A lot of these places aren't abandoned. They just appear like they're abandoned, like to the outside world. It's like a dead zone of their history, but they're still in operation. Like, some of them might be like agent secret. Hey, look, there was like Openreach. They became Openreach, right? I think that's the purple brand I was talking about, yeah. So some of these buildings that appear to be abandoned and stuff like that are actually being operated in by different agencies, like our MI5s and the smaller people underneath them, intelligence agencies and such, right? Your watchmen. I know it sounds conspiracy-ish, but it's not. They actually do operate, and they have offices and stuff in these buildings. Like, for instance, I used to live in an estate that had like a block of shops and a block of flats above it, right? But there was like these rooms that we thought were just bin cupboards, right? One day as a kid, I think I came out of the chemist or something like that. I was really young, right? And I saw the door open to one of these what we all thought were bin cupboards, right? And there was two men in there sat on computers and fucking screens, right? And the whole estate I just always thought that was a bin cupboard, right? And you never see these guys go in or out, right? But that day I saw them in there, right? So I know it's a reality. And it sounds, what I'm saying might sound like, you know, like the back rooms and all of that they cloned Tyrone, right? And you see how they were watching their estate, and it is really like that, right? Because operations are operations, experiments are experiments, right? Big corporations, all of that. It happens in schools, it happens in hospitals, just like Resident Evil, right? You see how Resident Evil's always, look how I'm tangenting, right? Take a breath. Alright, you see how Resident Evil is always like linked to a hospital or a police station or something like that, right? That's what it's really like in the real world, with your intelligence agencies, your private companies, and all of that, right? It really does exist. So these abandoned buildings, these bin cupboards, right? Unsuspecting bin cupboards, right? And one day I would love to talk about my actual estate and that actual building, right? Because my family had their own entrepreneurial ventures and all of that, right? They got to exist in a lot of the back rooms of those places, right? And as a kid, so did I got to see it. And a couple of other kids that had parents involved in the same things as mine, right? So I know that sounds kind of like, ooh, what was he into kind of thing, but it's nothing serious, right? It's just community development stuff, right? So that, well, from my perspective, it's just community development stuff, right? It might be those same hat men, right? Because I'm from Hat Town, right? If you know, you know. It might be that. It might not be that. Who knows, right? Anyway, it's Hat Town, right? It's like, I love that, right? It's so like, the idea is so like, you know, if you saw Watchmen, the film, and that time and space, like the 1930s, 1920s, how everyone dressed and everything looked, right? It was really like that. It really was like that. And it still kind of exists under the like flat-packed new German engineering society that we exist in Britain, right? It really does still exist, right? But what I was saying anyway, right? I noticed a lot of these abandoned looking buildings, right? And it made me think of back rooms, right? If you're not up on what that is, so I'm not sure where this originates from on the internet, because the internet is such a weird, big, scary place that a lot of these things we only end up finding out about once they reach our timelines and our Instagrams, right? So I found out about back rooms like on YouTube and Instagram and all that, right? But I think that probably existed in the like 4chan world and whatever other websites that were built up like that as well, right? So I assume it existed like that, right? But what it is, back rooms is basically like these abandoned places, right? And there's like people you can watch that do shows where they go to these old military bunkers and silos and things that are dug deep in the earth all over the world in different places, right? And it's like a whole city sometimes underneath the ground, or like a whole nuclear silo or a bunker or a dam. All of these places that were really built and engineered, right? They're away from the public eye. But the backrooms thing is a lot of that, but it's also a lot of empty office spaces, right? Built like in Japan and stuff, and in Asia there's whole cities and like towns that were built for a certain thing, but nobody ever uses them. So they're like ghost towns, right? They're ghost buildings. Backrooms is that, right? So it's like and off the back of these pictures and these videos of these abandoned, spooky, like haunted kind of places, right, comes a whole side theory of people. I know a lot of it is based on jokes and just like banter, right? But there's a whole side theory of these things where like the back rooms are your, like, remember in the Matrix when they go into the loading space, right, and you got your key maker running through these doors, opening doors, and it brings you into a new place, right? Backrooms has a whole side theory of like alternate universes and simulation, right? So your backroom would be like, if you ever played Evil Within 2 and 1, right? You see they're all in like a computer through their mind, right? And it's mad, right? But if you understand what I'm saying, backrooms is like that, right? It's just like, it's the back operating system of the reality that we actually exist in today, right? It's where your hat men are, your secret society, your lizards, your simulation, right? It's, if you believe in the simulation theory, like I said, nothing is rendered yet. So although we think, for instance, just for example, although we think Africa exists in England, if you've never been to Africa, you can't actually verify Africa exists, right? So just imagine simulation is like that. I don't know what is further than my eye can see over there, and whatever is further than my eye can see over there doesn't technically exist to me yet, right? It's not rendered in my map, in my personal gameplay of reality, right? That is what a simulation is, right? So people believe that the back rooms are like those. I know it's a joke, and it's like it's got its own lore, L-O-R-E, lore, right? Not law, right? It has its own lore and mythology to it, right? But yeah, people believe the back rooms exist like that. They're like the back operating systems, and that's where people disappear. That's where your Bermuda Triangles happen, your time skips, your time loops. People just theorize and pontificate, and it will make great films like your Black Screen and whatever that is, right? Stranger Things, right? All of those things come out of those ideas of back rooms, right? And to go into more of that science fiction land, multi-dimensionally, we kind of do exist in that way, but not really, right? Our dimensions stack up on each other, right? So however many dimensions really do exist, we don't know, right? But we know the three-dimensional land exists, which we exist in, right? But the fourth dimensional land might exist overlaying our own reality, right? So your ghosts, your ghouls, your back rooms, your simulators, your gods, and whoever makes this reality what it is would exist in those stacked upon realities based on theories. Oh, look at that plane, it's really low, isn't it? But yeah, like some people believe we're in a simulation, like Grand Theft Auto land, right? And when you get rich to a certain extent, right, the world does become your Grand Theft Auto simulation. You can fuck about like Elon Musk and Kanye West and all these people. They're literally running through life on side quests now. Do you know what I'm saying? And it really does become a simulation. And with enough power, enough influence, you can toy with the simulation in real time and watch how media changes, watch how you can socially engineer, financially engineer. Like, have you ever seen that clip on Instagram where the police are all running after somebody, right? And there's this poor white kid in front of them, and he's looking back and he's running as well, right? One of the police officers just grabs him and throws him to the ground like they're chasing him, they're going to arrest him. But then he just gets up and he just carries on running with the rest of the police officers, right? I know it's a joke, but that really did happen, right? And people will put the Grand Theft Auto cheat activated little thing over at the screen, right? And they're like, yeah, he called Lester, innit? And he got all of his stars removed, right? But it's like that. Once you get to a certain level of richness and experience and understanding of the world, you actually do have cheat codes, and the world literally does become your Grand Theft Auto, right? And I know it's mad. How did I get there? But yeah, man. That's where I got there from. Like me enjoying how architecture looks, the engineering of building stuff, and yeah, like I could have gone into architecture from graphic design as a kid, right? But I just wasn't that way inclined, right? Some people I know did do that. I don't know if they're really successful now, so I lost contact with them. But I've always appreciated the designing and building of buildings and this interior and the outside, right? So if you see my Instagram, some English kid, I uploaded some of the pictures, right? But I never got round to uploading all of them, right? It's just long. It takes a lot of time. I'm quite busy. And of course, when normal people that don't appreciate these things, like one time I was joking with my driver's mate, like on the job, and I was like, he was like, why do you take these pictures? Like, I don't know, like, I really like them. I really like how the buildings look, and I want to keep a memory of seeing this as a country kid, right? And I'm like, hey, maybe one day I'll be in Architecture's Digest, right? And he's like, what the fuck is that, right? But like I said, to normal people in a normal world, even though I'm not that deep in that world, they don't even know stuff like that exists, and Architecture Digest and magazines and shows and things based on building stuff, right? They don't even know that exists to them, right? So it exists. That's how I got into noticing those abandoned buildings and the anecdotal story of seeing the hat men in my estate and all of that, right? It exists. So when your sewer system has been built, right, and all of that, people had to really build these things, right, and exist while building these things. So yes, there are escape routes in some old buildings, and they tunnel down from wartime and all of that, right? There's all kinds of stuff, brilliant, intricate stuff that exists outside of what you can see as a normal person, right? And if you work certain jobs, if you know certain people, you're aware of these things too, right? They really do exist. And I know, like, usually, hey, what can I say, right? This is Driver's Mate Podcast. It's real, right? And I know sometimes I really do tangent, and that's kind of the point of this show, right? I was going to do a reaction video at the end of it, but I've chewed your ear off enough already, right? And I hope by me sharing these anecdotal stories, which I really do want to talk about more, like my work stories, the things I've actually seen in life and experienced, right? I know I'm saying it on the surface, and I'm excited, and I'm excitable, right? And I'm creative, and I'm ADHD, so I jump from one thing to the other really quickly. Like, and if you watch me and you listen to me, you probably think, what the fuck is this guy talking about, right? He's just conspiracy theorizing and all of this stuff, right? None of this is real. But I will assure you, majority of what I said today, of course not the backroom stuff, it's probably not real, right? Because what the fuck would it be real, right? I even question my own existence sometimes, right? From a philosophical standpoint, right? But although I banter with it and I make it out to be a joke, that those buildings, those agencies exist. Like, they're normal people that have jobs, they work those jobs as well. Like, you see it sometimes, they spill into movies and like film and books and scripts and stuff, because these are real people's lives. A lot of the stuff you see in 007 and or James Bond and that, although it's fantasized or fanciful, they really are spies, right? They are really Russian spies, they're really British spies, they're really American spies. Espionage is really a trade and actually a job, right? I've got a family member that works for the MI5, right? So it is real, right? The spy world is bloody well real, but it's not as fanciful as we make it, right? It's more matter of fact, people doing their job, protecting their country, doing espionage missions and social engineering missions and things like that, right? So it really is real, and I make it out to be a joke. It's bloody well real, right? It's fanciful, right? But it's real. Like, we've seen some interesting things in Britain, like with the Novichok and all of that, right? Have you seen that clip, right, of I think it's Kim Jong-un, I don't know how to say his name, right, and Putin, right? But they're both at a dinner or something like that, and they've both got a glass of drink or water or wine or whatever it is, right? And they cheers each other, right? But then there's like they memify, obviously they edit it, and it's like they play the X-Files music, and they're just staring at each other like, who's gonna drink this drink first, right? It is really fucking like that. That's what I'm saying. The world is a big, vast, scary place, but it's also funny and interesting and humorous and creative. They can make like fictional stories based on real events, right? That's what my point was. A lot of the stuff, although we make it into movies, and games too, right? Sometimes these ideas and stories come from real instances, and you'll see on a lot of them they put a disclaimer: this is not based on real people and real events. Why do you think they might have to do that? Yeah. So as much of a conspiracy theorist as you might think I am, which I'm really not, I'm quite surface on all of that world, and I do have my own opinions on people that go down those stupid rabbit holes and just abandon reality and their role to play in life and society. I'm aware of that too, right? So yeah, it's a joke, it's funny, we have a banner, but it's really real. If you're interested in that stuff, you probably watch documentaries and stuff. Or you might be the CSI type of person, or you might be the X-Files type of person. Me personally, I'm an X-Files type of person, right? It's entertaining, it's interesting, it's creative, it sparks ideas, it sparks creativity, science fiction movies and all of that. All of the likes, right? So even though, right, I'm quite a mixed bag, I'm quite a unique individual in terms of the many lives that I've lived already, right? And different people to different people, right? Yeah, but that's some of the stuff that interests me. So, if this was your first time watching this show, I really do hope you enjoyed it, right? This is a strange episode of Driver's Mate, right? But I hope you enjoyed it. Go check out some of the earlier episodes. Check out Driver's Mate podcast on YouTube. On YouTube, it has a different schedule to Spotify, right? So you're watching season 1, season 2 on YouTube, right? And you're about 2 to 3 years behind season 3 and whatever season will be on in the future over on Spotify and Patreon, right? So if you're not a Spotify person for conspiracy theory reasons too, right? Media manipulation reasons, that's fine, I understand, but just understand you're watching Driver's Mate from the past, right? You're not up on the episodes when they're made and how they're made, right? So if you want to be up on the episodes, obviously you are, because you're watching this, or maybe you're watching this in the future. Spotify and Patreon is where the current seasons are happening, right? YouTube, Drivers Mate podcast is where the older episodes are happening, right? And they're also happening in real time because it's an alternate dimension of a different Drivers Mate show on a different Truman Show season, right? So there's that. If you're watching on YouTube, you're watching quite late. If you're watching on Spotify, you're pretty much up to date. But if you're watching on Patreon, you're ahead of everybody. And you probably talk to me directly. And you probably have exclusive content. And I've probably said things in episodes that pertain to your questions and your ideas and your philosophical blah blahs, all right? Yeah, so I make stuff for you sometimes too, right? And the viewers don't really know, right? But yeah, check us out over there. Podcast on Patreon, YouTube, Spotify, and now we're on Instagram, Drivers Mate. And I think on Instagram now we can upload almost full episodes, right? So I know Instagram is quite fast paced, but you can literally just never leave Instagram if you want and watch most of Drivers Mate podcasts on Instagram, right? That's cool. So Drivers Mate podcast, I think, on Instagram. There's so much to remember, right? Hey. Drivers Mate on all social platforms, right? And my personal Instagram is Some English Kid. That's SUM English Kid. CNC CMI is my main YouTube channel where all the creative music industry stuff happens. And the shorter soliloquy, just teaching the methodology and philosophy happens there too, right? So CNC on YouTube, CNC CMI on YouTube, CNC CMI on Instagram. Athens Elder on Twitter is my personal, and yeah, that's it. That's all I have to say, right? I hope you really enjoyed the show. I hope I could accompany you and entertain you on this Drivers Mate podcast. Check out the rest and the older videos on YouTube in the Drivers Mate playlist, and on Spotify, and on Instagram. And what is going to happen when our Truman boat hits the painting? Good God, this is kind of crazy, right? How can one man ramble so much? I know, right? But I hope I interest you. I hope I entertained you. I hope you're getting the work done. And if you could take anything from this episode, I would say enjoy what you do for your work. Enjoy your personal life. Have happy times. Make memories, right? And don't take for granted your architecture and your buildings and the engineering wonders that exist around you, right? Appreciate them. Really breathe it in, because we live in what a wonderful time to be alive, right? A very excellent time, the best time to be alive in history, right? And then they say the best time to invest was 10 years ago, but the second best time to invest is now. So the best time to appreciate your life was when you was born. The second best time is now, right? So Drivers Mate podcast. Hope you have a good day. Hope you're getting the work done. Love you. Drivers Mate podcast. Truman Show's Truman Show. A real man in a real van in his real life in a reality show, speaking about things he really shouldn't be speaking about. But what do you expect? Because it's the only real person in the show. Season 3 now available on Spotify for free. Seasons 1 and 2 on YouTube available in real time. Please like, subscribe and share, and check out Patreon. Peace.